Hey, Clemson family, let's take a look at some of the breakout players we expect to see during the 2022 season. We're going to have guest Matt Connolly of ClemsonSports.com break that down for us.
I'm Daniel Shirley. Matt also talked about the quarterback situation and how the linebackers look going into the 2022 season.
I'm Bill Zimmerman. Welcome to episode 18 of the Reign Supreme Alway podcast. Go ahead and tap that subscribe or follow button so we can keep you up with the latest big happenings in Clemson sports, and you won't miss out on analysis of what it all means. You can find our homepage at clemsonkickoff.com. We're on all the major podcast apps. If you just search Clemson and scroll a little bit, we're not too far down the list. Catch us on Twitter at Clemson Kickoff, and we also upload our audio to youtube.com/Clemson Kickoff. Wherever you listen, we are glad you found us. Well, now we're joined by one of the top people on the Clemson beat. We've got Matt Connolly joining us from ClemsonSports.com, which is part of the On3 network. Matt, thanks for joining us. How you doing with fall camp, midstream, and maybe winding down a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. Thank y'all for having me. Doing great. Catching our breath a little bit here with fall camp, like you said, kind of winding down and getting ready for the regular season to get started here in less than 2 weeks.
You had a post a while back about some breakout players here during the fall and 5 guys to keep an eye on. You want to jump in on some of those and who maybe some of the casual fans will become a little more aware of this year?
Yeah, for sure. So Barrett Carter is one of the guys that I had on that list, and I'm really excited to see him this year. You know, I think Trenton Simpson's getting a ton of attention, but Barrett Carter is another guy at linebacker who I think is just ready to explode. He's great in coverage, can come up and help in run support. I think he could probably play running back if you want him to. I think he could probably play receiver if you wanted him to. He's just an excellent athlete that I'm excited to see this year. He's kind of taken over that Sam Nichols spot. They kind of moved Trenton Simpson inside to just make sure they could get Barrett on the field and maximize his ability. So he's a guy for sure that I'm excited to see. Marcus Tate on the offensive line is someone who I think is ready to have a really big year. I think we kind of all saw last year that he wasn't necessarily ready to be a starter in game 1 going up against Georgia. And I think in some ways that kind of hurt him as the season went along. Just he lost some confidence early on, trying to block one of the best defensive fronts in college football, if not the best. So I think he's a guy that now he's had another year in the program, added some weight, added some strength. I'm expecting big things from him this year at left guard, and wouldn't be surprised if you see him play a little left tackle too. Nate Wiggins at cornerback is a player that we've heard a ton about during camp and even before camp, just talking with some guys in Charlotte, at the ACC kickoff event, they were mentioning him as a guy that they think is a future first-round pick who would be a breakout player for the defense this year. And DJ called him, I think, the best cover corner he's ever gone against, whether it be in a game or in practice. So those will be a few. Jake Brennanstall at tight end, is a guy I think that could have a big year. Obviously, he's going to be behind Davis Allen some and maybe playing alongside him some too. But just as a receiving threat, I think he's got a very bright future as a guy you can even split out some, whether it be in the slot or out wide. I think he can help you there. So those will be a few names off the top of my head, just guys that kind of had good camps, so I think are ready to have big years this year.
You mentioned Brennanstall. I know that they want to get the tight ends involved more in the offense. That's something that's been missing for a couple of years. Do you think the passing lanes will be there, the protection will be there to be able to make use of the tight ends?
I think at least more so than they have been in the past. I think the offensive line this year is going to be improved. So first of all, you've got Blake Miller at right tackle, who's probably another guy I should have mentioned as well, who is a true freshman. And just from talking with the coaching staff and some other players, it sounds like he's very good right now in run blocking, does a great job there. I think pass protection is kind of coming along and maybe not his strength, and you may see some struggles there at times this year. I do think they feel good about him, but the rest of that line is just really, really good. You're talking about guys that have played a lot of football before, started a lot of games before. I think they have a lot of confidence in. So I do think that pass protection will be there. Obviously, you need DJ Uiagalelei to be accurate at quarterback and Cade Klubnik when he gets his reps to be accurate, obviously, as well. So that'll play a role, but I do think they'll try to get the tight ends more involved. When you're looking at Kyle Richardson as a passing game coordinator, obviously he's coaching the tight ends as well. He knows what he has in that room. He knows what those guys can do. And, they're going to do some different things offensively with the routes this year, some more option routes and trying to get guys open and utilize more parts of the field, I think. So, yeah, I do think that that'll be a big part of the game plan this year, just trying to get those guys more touches.
Matt, for the option routes, I've read your stories. You've mentioned that can be a good thing and a bad thing if they're not on the same page and if the timing is there. How has that looked so far during the parts of camp that you've seen?
Yeah, they haven't done it a ton in camp when we've been able to watch, to be honest. So, they kind of kick us out right around when they start doing more one-on-one stuff or even 11-on-11 type stuff where you can kind of see it better. Just from talking with players and coaches, I think it's gone well, but there have been some times where there have been some mistakes. I would say maybe 90% of the time you're kind of getting the right route would be about the number that I would put on it, just as far as the quarterback being on the same page, making the right read, the receiver being on the same page, making the right read. So that's going to be something I'm fascinated to see against Georgia Tech, and honestly throughout the years, just how that chemistry is, how it's going along. You look back at the Georgia game last year, the pick six that happened was on an option route where Justin Ross, I think he cut in and was supposed to break out, and the next thing you know, it's a pick six and the only touchdown in the game. So they realize how important it is to make sure they're on the same page. I know that that's something they spend a lot of time on during camp, is just trying to make sure that that is the case. So definitely something worth monitoring. But yeah, like you said, it can be very good if the quarterback and receiver are on the same page and make the right read, or it can be a disaster if they're not.
Matt, with Carter and Simpson, just how good can those two guys be together? Because they're scary athletically.
Yeah, I think those two guys are just insanely athletic and going to be a lot of fun to watch this year. I can't remember a time when Clemson has had linebackers that are this athletic, whether it be Barrett Carter, Trent Simpson, and then adding Jeremiah Trotter into the mix too. I think is a very athletic guy. So, I was talking with Eric McLean a little bit, and he was saying just how much the linebackers stood out when he went and watched them practice. He mentioned on his podcast the other day that he thought that there would be a drop-off maybe at linebacker when you're losing guys in Skowski and Spector that were so productive for such a long time. But he said on there that he feels great about this linebacking core and thinks it'll be one of the better ones in the ACC. So super excited to see that group. And just, I think something I'm going to write about later this week too is what Wes Goodwin was talking about with what you can do with the linebackers when you have guys that are as athletic as Trenton Simpson and Barrett Carter. So they both can play different positions. Maybe 1 week, and I don't think they're going to change positions, but maybe 1 week you show a formation where Simpson goes and covers and Carter blitzes, and then the next week they think they kind of have it down, the offense does, and then you send the other one and kind of send the other one out and cover. So there's just so many things you can do when you have diverse skill sets the way those two guys are.
I was surprised to hear the other day Wes Goodwin talking about Wade Woodaz being listed number 2 on the depth chart at Sam right now. It's kind of hard for me to fathom that they wouldn't move Simpson back. They wouldn't bring Makuba up. They wouldn't, they've got so many options there. Malcolm Green, Tyler Venables. Would Woodaz really be like next man up, as they say, or would they take advantage of some of that flexibility, some of that cross training, even though Woodaz is obviously having a great camp and proving why they signed him?
Yeah, so I did a projected depth chart earlier this week, and I had Wood as number 2 on the depth chart, and I got some pushback for that, on our board with people saying, that wouldn't be the case, and he's not really number 2, and you should have somebody else in there. And I kind of thought about it some, and I ended up kind of going with the fact, I think kind of what I settled on is that Woodaz is the number 2 guy on the depth chart. He's the guy that they're going to have number 2 on the depth chart. He's the guy that's getting the number 2 reps right now. With that said, if the game was on the line, I do think they would move someone in who's more experienced, who has played more, even if it's not necessarily a true Sam Nickel. I think they would kind of move things around to get someone in there who's played a lot more football. So kind of a little bit of both, I guess I would say. Like I do think he is the number 2 guy right now at Sam, and I think that that's kind of where he's working. And who knows, maybe he would get those reps. But I kind of lean more to if the game was on the line, and if you're playing NC State and up 3, in the fourth quarter and Barrett Carter goes down, my guess is they're bringing in someone who has a little more experience to try to close out that game.
Matt, with Nate Wiggins, he's taken a huge step. Now it looks like he might be the other starter across from Sheridan Jones. It probably a concern position maybe at cornerback, but what does that mean for Wiggins that he's been able to take that big of a step and get into the starting lineup?
Yeah, I think right now he's definitely the guy that's going to be the starter opposite Sheridan. And I think, if I had to pick one of those that I'm a little more concerned about, honestly, I think it would probably be Sheridan. I think Nate has better size, is a little bit faster. He doesn't have the experience Sheridan does, but I just think that he's really in a good spot as a player. Now, that doesn't mean I don't have confidence in Sheridan, because I do think he is also a good player. He's played a lot more football for sure, but he's also been inconsistent at times during his career. And Dabo was talking about earlier in camp how he kind of lost his confidence at one point, really needed to get that back. So I don't know that I would necessarily say it's a huge concern, but if you were going to point to a concern on the defense, I do think it would probably be cornerback, where you have some guys that are very talented, not even mentioning Toriano Pride and Jaden Lucas, a couple of freshmen. Fred Davis, I think, is a talented younger player. So you do have some guys that are talented, but just not a lot of experience there. And obviously you're replacing two very good cornerbacks in Andrew Booth and Mario Goodrich.
Over on the offensive side of the ball, I've heard some encouraging things about Cade Klubnik, and I've been in the camp of, hey, the best path to improve quarterback play is DJ Uyunglele taking a step forward, but it sure sounds like Klubnik is really capable, maybe a little more velocity on the ball. He's put weight on. Brendan Streeter giving him high compliments and firmly saying, yes, he's going to play. There's no question about it. What have you seen out of Klubnik here during fall camp and the snaps you've been able to get an eye on?
I definitely agree with the added velocity. He's added, 20 or so pounds of muscle and just looks like a different quarterback. One thing even we saw in the spring is just the way he carries himself. I mean, he's sprinting around the field, going from rep to rep, always trying to be the first guy over there, very encouraging of teammates. He spends a lot of time after practice staying and working. And that's not to say that DJ's not doing those same things, but just Cade coming in and doing it as a freshman, I think has been impressive. Man, I'm really interested to see how the quarterback situation kind of unfolds throughout the season. I thought that DJ had a pretty firm grasp on the starting job, and I've been on record several times saying the leash is shorter than it was last year, but that, I still feel like DJ will probably start throughout the year and have a pretty good season. But it does seem like Cade's kind of closed that gap a little bit from where we were at the start of fall camp. And, like you said, having Streeter come out and say, he's definitely going to play. We'll see how much he plays. It'll kind of depend on how we're moving the ball and stuff. It is a little different than what we heard early on during camp. It's even a little different than what we heard from Dabo last week. So, yeah, I think it's going to be telling if Cade's getting a series, third series of the game or so, playing late first quarter, early second. I think that's going to be kind of interesting, especially if DJ maybe doesn't score his first series or two and Cade goes down and leads a scoring drive. So, man, there's a number of different scenarios that could unfold here against Georgia Tech and kind of throughout the first few weeks of the season before you get into some tougher games with Wake Forest and NC State. But, yeah, that quarterback position is really going to be fascinating early on this year.
I also wonder if having a more capable backup allows them to do more with Uyunglele, especially if he's healthy, but also, well, if something does happen to him, we do have another guy that we can put in and feel more confident in than the guys they had last year.
Yeah, and they did run him a lot last year too, though. Even when he was hurt, I mean, he was running kind of banged up at Louisville. He obviously scored a big touchdown with his legs. So I don't know if it'll affect play calling too much in that sense. I think it's more so just that if he's struggling, they're not going to hesitate to pull him. Like with Tyson Pumajon, you just didn't have a backup that you felt like could come in and move the ball and make plays. I remember, I won't say his name, but I remember last year at Pitt, there was a guy in the press box sitting with us on the Clemson beat who was his first year on the beat. And, DJ threw the pick six on a shovel pass. And he said, man, you've got to make a change here and you've got to put in Tyson. And I was like, man, you haven't been to open practices and seen Tyson throw. I just don't think that they felt like they had an option behind DJ. Whereas this year, you have Cade Klubnik, who is a more than capable backup, who is very accurate. And you hope it doesn't get to this point. But, man, Hunter Johnson's a guy, too, that if it's really going bad and you need someone just to close out a game and not turn the ball over and not screw up and just protect the ball, I do think he's a guy that could come in and be kind of a game manager type. Now, will we actually see that this year? I think Clemson hopes not. But he is a guy that started games, played in the Power 5 level, knows the system, 6-year senior type of guy that's seen a lot of football. So, I think he's even a better option than they had last year in Tyson as a backup.
Matt, you've mentioned the line, you've mentioned the quarterbacks. The wide receivers have to be better as well. What do you think they're going to get from this group this year? Because it feels like there are more options there at wide receiver.
There are. They've just got to get healthy. Bo Collins has been banged up for a couple of weeks now. They're hoping to get him back next week, although they also said they were hoping he would be back this week as well. So, that's going to be interesting to see if he's back for Georgia Tech, kind of where he's at from a health standpoint. EJ Williams is another guy who's kind of still been in green this week after they were hoping that he was going to be back full go too. So, Those two guys are not guys that you want banged up. Joseph Ngata obviously has struggled staying healthy his entire career. There's just, I think that it's a better position overall, and I think that there's more depth there, but they need to get guys healthy. Adam Randall, I think, could be a difference maker when he comes back. He's just a guy that we've seen, just after practice time and time again, putting in the work. He was obviously the fastest receiver during a practice early on in camp. Dabo said they kind of have timers on all of them, kind of keep up with their speed that they're running at. And he ran the fastest, even being in yellow with a knee brace. So I think getting him back healthy will be a big shot in the arm. But yeah, if they can stay healthy, I feel better about this group. I think Antonio Williams has a chance to be a dynamic playmaker right away and can make some plays in the slot. So there's definitely more bodies there. It's just getting healthy, staying healthy, and then going out and performing.
That all sounds great. What else you have coming up on 3?
Yeah, so I did a story on 5 players on Clemson's offense who stood out during fall camp. Have one of those on Clemson's defense coming up as well. Kind of going through position by position breakdown, looking in ahead of the season now that fall camp's over and kind of getting into the nitty gritty of football season and kind of where things stand. So those will be coming up here over the next several days. Obviously, it's about time for games now, so we'll have tons of coverage all year at clemsonsports.com. Encourage people to come check it out and get a free trial 7 days and kind of see what all we offer.
Well, the beat is full of terrific reporters, and you are definitely one of them. I always enjoy your stuff. So thanks a bunch for taking some time coming on and chatting with us.
Yeah, for sure. No problem. Appreciate y'all having me.
Thanks, Matt.
Well, if any news breaks in the next few days, we'll be sure to react to that as well and discuss what it means for the Tigers. I hope everyone has enjoyed this. Thanks again to Matt Connolly. We are glad you found us, Clemson family. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button or that follow button for us. You can stay up to speed every time we react to big news around Clemson sports. We want to keep this a free podcast, and having subscribers helps us do that. Our homepage has some great resources. That's over at clemsonkickoff.com. We've got an easy-to-read schedule, and we make sure we post kickoff times right up at the top every time they're announced. You can play all our episodes there. We've got some shorts as well, and you can find all the links to where we are on podcast apps. Follow us on Twitter at Clemson Kickoff, where we'll retweet news as it happens and give quick hit opinions in real time every now and then as well. Until the next episode, I'm Bill Zimmerman.
I'm Daniel Shirley. Go Tigers.